Now, we've talked about instance methods and we've talked about class methods. There's one last type of method to cover, which is the static method. Similar to a class method, a static method in Python is defined with a decorator on top. This one says static method rather than class method. Here, we are making a static method that gives you the sound of a car. In this case, vroom vroom. We can call that on our car class, just like we could a class method or class attribute. Now, this type of method can live on a class, but it takes neither a class argument nor an instance argument. It can take whatever other arbitrary arguments you like. For example, we have a sound implementation here that takes in the use of a car and gives you a different sound based on whatever use you want. So we have a commuting car, makes a beeping sound, a racing car, makes a loud engine sound, or a regular show car. But by definition, a static method does not have to take in a class or an instance attribute. Now, in these cases, the state of the class itself has little to do with the method. Instead, the class mostly serves as a namespace for the static method, a convenient label on the front that gives us some more information about when to use the method and makes it unique from other methods with the same signature, that is, methods that take the same arguments but do different things. Let's look at an example that might better illustrate how we might use a static method. Here we have a couple classes, noun and verb, and they both allow you to get a definition of a certain word. The example that I've used here gives you a definition for stick. Now, depending on whether it's a noun or a verb, the definition of stick is different. The noun, a stick, is defined as a thin piece of wood that has fallen or been cut from a tree. But if I'm talking about the verb, to stick, I might mean the definition to adhere or cling to something. Now, suppose I want to be able to get the appropriate definition for stick depending on what part of speech it is. By defining static methods on noun and verb, I create a namespace, that is, a label on the front of my expression. When I want to get the definition of stick, the noun, I can say noun.definition stick. When I want to get the definition of stick, the verb, I can get verb.definition stick. And as you can see, those two expressions give me different results. The noun version of this method returns a thin piece of wood that has fallen or been cut from a tree, and the verb version gives me the definition adhere or cling to something. Now, in practice, you might use something like this if you wanted to be able to use different protocols or underlying strategies to be able to do the same thing. Suppose that you were building a site that allowed people to say which books they liked, and you wanted to be able to recommend them other books. Maybe you have two models for that. A natural language processing model that gets you recommendations based on other texts with similar themes and similar lexical structures to the books that you liked. You also have a k-nearest neighbors model, which says these are the books you liked. Other people who liked those books also liked these other books. So one of them is based on the text, and one of them is based on the collection of people who are all reading these books together. Perhaps both of these models have a get recommendations method on them. And you want to be able to make it very clear when you call get recommendations which of these two models you're using to get somebody's book recommendations. You could structure your code so that you pass in the same inputs to natural language processing dot get recommendations or k-nearest neighbors dot get recommendations, and potentially get different recommendations from those two methods depending on the type of model that was used. By contrast, if you were to scope your program so that get recommendations was available from either of those two models, it might be difficult for other programmers or clients to understand how the get recommendation method is working.